There we go. And we're live.
Okay, we've got two waiting already. That's great.
Baruch Hashem. How's your week been? What's happening?
Thank God. Okay, busy. Baruch Hashem. Actually, a really nice, wonderful, relaxing weekend. So,
Baruch Hashem.
only multiple speeches, but it was quiet, nice and quiet.
So we had our first scholar in residence in 2 years.
Really? Who was that?
We had Reb Chaim Marcus came for Shabbos.
Nice.
So it was beautiful. We had a really good time with him.
That's wonderful. It's nothing like everybody coming together. Did you do like a community meal of sorts?
So we had a big tish and we had a shalashudas and it was really nice.
That's great. That's great. There's nothing like that. It's also a change of pace.
Yeah. It was great. It felt a little bit like we're opening things up again a little more. Things are happening again.
Right, real, yeah. So we had our first scholar in the summer. Actually, it was amazing, and it was Brigadier General Winter, Ophir Winter. It was fantastic. It was really unbelievable. It was really a whole experience. So, yeah, it's also to see everybody in the same room again.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes a big difference.
For sure, it's a little bit like you have to wake the world up to everybody's doing everything. Might as well get back to learning.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that feeling when the shuls are still closed and people are all in Lowe's, fixing their house. There are hundreds of people. They're the lines went all the way back to the back of the store. I'm like, there's something strange here.
Right. That's it.
So, anyways.
Okay. So David
HaMelech. He's getting us into our zone. Last week we talked a little bit about how we're the Chanukas Abayis. We're dedicating our house to God.
We're the bias, right?
And elevating all of our wherewithal. Now, now we're trying to get into the zone. We're at the beginning of Pesukei Zimra here.
Right. That's so we said Rav Kook told us that when I lift myself up, I'm lifting up the whole world. I'm lifting up the Rebbeinu Shalom. There's no such thing as David HaMelech says. There's no such thing as me lifting myself up without lifting up HaKadosh Baruch Hu, without lifting up the entirety of the Bria.
So true. It's such a meaningful point,
Yeah.
Such a meaningful point.
It's, seeing ourselves as part of everything and seeing everything as part of us. So I feel like in many ways that's the whole Torah of Rav Kook.
It really is. It's sort of just having the tools to realize that you are bigger than just the small decisions you're making in your individual life.
Right. It's almost like the goof that we have individually is an illusion.
Yes.
This looks like an individual thing from that, but it's not true. Yeah.
I actually just came across this in his writings on Shabbos. We learned his thought, he started me off a few years ago on the Einaya. And he said, it's such a beautiful thing. He said that the reason why in the future, when we have the Mashiach, we're going to talk about more Mashiach than we are going to talk about Shibud Mitzrayim, is because leaving Mitzrayim was about finishing and completing the Jewish nation. And Mashiach will be about completing the world. It's like, a different world, a different language. We need to talk about Hashem had a purpose to this whole place, the whole universe. Everything.
Right. You feel that very strongly. This one speaks a lot about this, the transition between Avraham and Yitzchak. That Avraham was a big time universalist.
Right.
And then
very particular.
And then Yitzchak hones in on the Jewish people, and that's not a bad thing. It's that Yitzchak realizes that in order to affect all of humanity, you have to create something called the Jewish people. But it was never the end goal. The end goal was always to come back to that universalism of Avram Avinu.
So true. It's interesting. I just came across the Mishnah Chochmah. She points out that when Avram Avinu he gets the hallmark, the stamp of being that universalist is when he gets his bris milah, which is particularistic. It's just so interesting.
Right.
That unique mitzvah is what makes him.
And he has to ask permission for that because that's going to make him somewhat different from Avner, Eshkol, and Mamre, the chevra that he's with. There's an awesome Kutzka. Only the Kutzka could say like this, because the pasuk says "Sanefesh asher asa b'Charan," all the chevra that Avram brought with him from Haran to Eretz Yisrael, that he had turned into monotheists. So the Kutzka asked the question. He says, "Where did they go? Where did they go?"
We've talked about this before. The Shmiras Ariya, Rav Neria.
Right, but so the Kutzka says it was Yitzchak's fault.
Wow.
He says because Avram Avinu was like a warm, loving guy. Yitzchak was like Midas Hadin. Guys were not interested in that. They ran away.
They didn't like the time for prayer. They didn't like this whole business about rules.
No, they like
the fireside. That was more like in our space.
So, but that was the entirety of Yitzchak's Chras HaNefesh was, okay, we have this big dream, make it tachlis. Like, what does that mean in terms of like the expectations that I have of myself? What expectations do I have of you?
Like, Aaron didn't want us to come to Shachris.
No, no.
He just wanted us to have a l'chayman, you know.
Right. He was sponsoring Kiddush. You want us to be there by Hashkama. That's different, Rabbi.
Exactly.
That's different. So he says they left. They left. They couldn't handle that.
Beautiful.
You see this movement from the universalism to the particularism to the eventual goal of like the Sforno that we've spoken about so many times by Matan Torah, is that our goal is universalist.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Exactly. We have to be the priest. Priesthood comes with responsibility.
Right.
It's a big one to hold.
All right. So let's see. This is such a strange transition.
Oh yes. It's very abrupt, right?
Right. Like I'm lifting myself up. I'm lifting the world up, and my enemies shouldn't be happy with me. What does that even mean? So, Rabbi Trump.
No. We're switching off. Yeah, all yours.
Oh no, okay, fine. I fine, but you did the next piece afterwards.
Of course.
Somebody that's connected up above. Somebody whose exaltedness, I think, is that of Kedusha. Ramus Hashem Bichvayda is the uplifting of Hashem in His honor. So he Hatchuna Hayoser Mesuchenes Leha'ilam. That is devastatingly dangerous to the world. Somebody that is connected to Kedusha. That's somebody to be nervous about. Why? He says, when those people whose hands wish to destroy the world is that which is in control. Ad kedei l'sameach or l'smeach b'yirida som shel tzadikim, they are happy when tzadikim fail. No say degel ha kodesh uremus Hashem ba'olam, those that hold the banner of Hashem in the world. He says, as or hakdusha mishtafel ba'olam, that is when the light of kedusha is most downtrodden. By the way, Rav Kook is not talking about like Rachmana litzlan, like Rishoyim anti-Semites, like Rishoyim Arurim, right? He's specific here. He says there are people that are besimcha b'yirida som shel tzadikim when they see a tzaddik fail. There's certain people that get like a super geschmack.
Yeah.
When like the news breaks.
There's a blog spot for this, you know.
Somebody did something. Yeah. Ooh. You see?
I always told you.
Right? Yeah. There's a simcha that people have when they see tzaddikim failing.
Terrible thing.
There's at the core of it. I don't remember who was saying this to me. One of my chavrim was saying this so a while ago, that we'll say this real is that like the modern Orthodox Jew looks at like the Haredi Jew with like a little bit of like, you're definitely more religious than me. So when you mess up, it makes me feel good. And then the Haredi Jew looks at like, you know, the Hasidic Yid, like whatever, with the shrine, the payers, the back of his shirt. Like when he messes up, you see, you're not so good. And then like, you know, the Hasidic Yid looks at like the Rebbe, like, ooh, the Rebbe messed up. Oh, okay, besed. Like it makes everybody feel comfortable being a sinner when like you see somebody big fail.
It's a sad thing because it really is a reflection on self.
Right.
It's our own sense of comfort, which we have inside of ourselves. It's just sad because ultimately we all win when we all win, and failing to realize that it's missing. It's missing something. So
right. It's if we would to a certain extent we would be more comfortable with our failures from time to time. We'd be like a little more comfortable with the fact that like, okay, people mess up, I mess up, they mess up. We're all trying to grow here. that would be the case. Then nobody would be happy to see somebody else fail. You're only happy when you see somebody else fail because that's now mirror something on me.
That's exactly.
It's a big tzara. Like that simcha. It's such a perverse simcha.
So what's he asking for?
So that's David HaMelech. Let's see.
So let's push it forward. I wonder what the is the change of climate, is the difference of leadership. I'm interested.
So he says like this. He says, "V'shir gadol v'niskav aleinu lashir b'chol eis asher anachnu roim." There's a great song that we should sing at every moment. The Karen HaKodesh Mizramemes, whenever Kedusha is on the upswing, he says, "Ad kedei oisa hamadrega shaloy uyuchla ha'ovim shel avdei Hashem ha'oyevim shel avdei Hashem ha'ne'emanim liyosmechim al shiflesam." There's a song that we sing whenever we see that, like Teromim Karen Yishol, that like the Jewish people are on the way up, so that the enemies of avdei Hashem should not be happy. It says, "She'az nigda'asi karnam shel zedonei eretz." Then the banner, the horn of those people that wish to see the destruction of the Jewish people, that their banner is buried. V'karnas tzadikim misromos, and the banner of tzadikim is uplifted. B'yamin Hashem, with the right hand of Hashem. Harei me'ma v'oisechayel, that does great things. The song is, so this is what he's saying, is that the song is, when the Jewish people are successful, it means that
beyond
we're not happy when we fail.
Right, very good. It's not possible for them to criticize. Is what he's saying. So Hashem, please allow us to get to that level where it's no longer possible for those folks to have any dent. No matter how long they're going to scream on their blogs, and no matter how many social media campaigns they're going to get, Kosh Baruch Hu, let it be that that the good is so obvious and so we'll call it incandescently true that nobody else can have anything else to say.
I mean, you saw this with like all the politics in the last year and a half, 2 years, 10 years, whatever. That like people have to catch themselves. Like, I hate this particular political candidate so much that I want the whole institution to fail. And you're like, no, but hold up a second. If like the United States of America collapses, that's not a good thing.
Yes.
Like, no matter who the president is, that's not a good thing. Like, is where people go, ooh, I might really not like you, I might really disagree with you, but your failure would be my failure too. Like, that's David HaMelech's great shir, is that no matter how much, Ammon and Moav might hate Malchus Beis David, for David HaMelech to fail is bad for the world. Like, v'lo simachta ovei li is that they won't be happy to see me fail, meaning even if they don't like me. Because my failure then is the failure of like the whole world. As much as like, Europeans hate Americans, and we as shtickle know this, right? That like people outside of America, for the Americans listening, you should know, everywhere else in the world, even the places that speak English, there's like this love-hate relationship with America. People like watch American TV and go, I want to be like them, but I don't want to be anywhere near them. Like, it's a weird thing that people have. But like nobody wants like the collapse of the United States of America, because then like the world falls into anarchy. Even as much as like, European news loves to make fun of America. It's like it's Teromim Karen USA. Like you can't hope for the collapse of it, even as much as you don't like it. I think that's what Rav Kook is saying. Like David HaMelech is saying, "V'lo simachta ovei li," is if I'm being matzliach in the way that I'm supposed to be matzliach, then even if people don't like me, v'lo simachta ovei li, they're never going to want my downfall.
Right. There's a certain, I guess.
Right. Have them. They believe in something bigger. It's
it's very hard to. That's a very hard reality to imagine in today's world, which is why that's such an important thing to be praying for.
I feel like so much of like what Israeli politics has like tried to do in the West is to prove this point. It's like, okay, we understand that you disagree with Israel and Palestinians and v'chule, But like, just imagine for a moment if Israel fell apart. Like, what happens to the Middle East then? Like, it's not like, a big Islamic kumbaya. It's like another failed Islamic state. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, that I think it connects directly to the first part of the statement. So we're saying, "I remember Hashem, Hashem, lift me up and don't let me go down." So that it'll be such a, because I represent, because I'm interconnected with all the good forces in the world, and what I do influences those around me. Then it will let it be to such a stage that it will be beyond critique. It will be beyond the ability of people to. So it's very powerful to sort of put those two to connect it to each other when one realizes one's agency.
Right. I mean, I suppose that it almost acts as a cause and effect. Is that if I see my success as the success of the world, then the world will be invested in my success.
Right. And conversely, it's interesting to notice, I'm sure we've all met people like this, where you have somebody who becomes personally invested in their communal endeavor. So it becomes personal. So now when you insult them, you're insulting them. When you critique the way the community is doing something, you're saying, I don't believe you, you're attacking me. That's when it all fails, because it becomes personal. When it's as long as it's not personal, as long as we're fighting a much bigger battle and we're representing greater values, it's not personal. It's a, we you don't like what I'm doing. I mean, I'm doing God's work. You don't have to like God's work, but that's what I'm doing. So we're gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I had the great schus we had for the first time in 2 years this past week. We sat down with all of the rabbis of Boca and Delray with the Federation of South Palm Beach County, which is Reform and Conservative and Orthodox and Chabad and everybody across the spectrum. And before the pandemic, we sat around the table once a month and we schmoozed about things that are going on in the community. And people from everywhere, from every single stream, say like, well, how do you sit at a table with those people? Because there's plenty of disagreements. And the aside that like everybody comes down to is we disagree about everything. The one thing that we don't disagree with is that we're all losing to unaffiliated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like there are more unaffiliated Jews in Boca Raton, Florida, than Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Egalitarian, Chabad, like everybody put together, there are more unaffiliated Jews. So the bigger mission is finding ways to connect to that. Because if everybody can fight about what they fight about, and Khalila to say that we don't have major disagreements, we very much do. Very much do. But like to realize that like there's something bigger than that. And most of the time, like Chaver don't have that. Like people like to live in their particularist. Like
Very much so.
Rav Kook himself was offered to be a Hasidic Rebbe. There was a shul I think in Paris, if I'm not mistaken, that was named after Rav Kook in his lifetime. It was the Beis Medrash Avram Yitzchak, and they wanted him to be the Rebbe of like a Hasidic movement, and he refused. He says, if I'm a Rebbe for a group of Jews, then I'm not a Rav for Klal Yisrael, and I want to be a Rav for Klal Yisrael.
Such foresight. It takes knowing your place.
In many ways, it didn't happen in his lifetime.
No.
With all of the people that yelled and screamed at Rav Kook for being a universalist, like, nobody was happy with the universalist. No. You have to, if you're my rabbi, you have to hate them.
Very much so.
You have to hate them.
Very, very true. I just came across. I'm just happened to pick up the Yehuda Mirsky biography of Kook this year, which is a very different perspective to the Simcha Raz one. He talks about in 1905, Eliezer Ben Yehuda wrote an article defending his position of being a pro-Ugandaist in one of his papers. He had a few papers, and in it he said, people critique me of forgetting the past, meaning like to be a Zionist, you need to be a Zionist. That's what people were saying to him, and he pushed the Uganda proposal.
Right.
And he said, let's be honest, all of us have turned our back on our past, except for the group. He had a name for the Haredi community in Yerushalayim. He called the group dedicated to finding problems with others or something like that. And so he said we all turned our back on the past. Rav Kook was like so shocked like that. How could you say we for the Jewish people? So he wrote an open letter, not to Eliezer Ben Yehuda, but he wrote an open letter to the youth reading the paper, saying that Judaism is never rejecting the past. It's taking the past and seeing how it augments the future. And I welcome you to continue the conversation with me and you're speaking to the youth, right? Because he felt that how could somebody on an influential level of Eliezer ben Yehuda say this? So it only took a few weeks before 17 Rabbanim in Yerushalayim wrote a letter against Rav Kook saying he's uninitiated. You don't respond to people like this because he has no standing. And in a certain sense, there was that dichotomy. Rav Kook was trying to realize very clearly that the next generation of Israeli government and army and industry is going to be these unaffiliated youth. And if you're not speaking to them, who is? Eliezer ben Yehuda is speaking to them. But the other communities, no. You don't speak to anybody else. It's complicated. It's complicated to be a leader who speaks universal language.
That's people define themselves so much by what they're not.
Yes.
Or by who they're not.
Who they're not, right?
Right, like
why
you because I'm not them.
Yeah, it's much easier to just
That's tough. So that's the word. Is that like I want to be in a place that even people that disagree with me want to see me succeed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big tefillah.
It's a big tefillah. It's a big tefillah. All us, we all have our space to be able to be a little more universalistic.
Right.
What do you utilize it? Let's jump one more idea.
Yeah, let's see.
Hashem, I hoped in you and you healed me. So what does he say here? Yeah? He says in the paragraph, Hashem hu Elokai, because Hashem is my God, because I have a relationship with him. Hamashre olai es Elokusai, who decides to bring his divine presence upon me. Hamiyuchad lechobriyosav keilu rak habriya hazois levado shaloi. And Hashem treats me as if I'm the only creation, because I'm special. I'm important in his book. Because the multitude of other creations does not interrupt the unique relationship I have with my God. Because all of them are meant to cleave to him. Again, some hachoik haloki ki hashava elov hi tavi yeshua. I already know that. Then my hope in him will bring redemption. Mibnei shebazeh ha'adam chazer v'shav l'makor havayasai. Persons returning to the quarry from which they came. Shumakor shleimusai, which is where he is complete. V'shleimus lagumura misalekes kol chisron. And while I cling to completeness, then deficiency leaves me. Barefua hamuchletes muchrachas lavoi, and real healing comes. That's why Hashem when I hope in you, you heal me. So there's a few pieces here. There's like a lot of very beautiful ideas which he talks about here. So just let's go back to number one is this extreme notion of hashgacha pratis. It's funny, coming off of the universal, which was the last paragraph. This is very different. I know that as much as Hashem has an interest in all of creation and the universe, Hashem has a very specific interest in me. And that interest doesn't change with other people. The example I think about all the time is parenting. So it's an amazing thing when a person has the tremendous merits to become a parent. The first thing, it's an amazing thing that suddenly there's this unbridled love for a being that never was in the world just a few months ago. And yet, when you have a second child, what happens is you think that all of your love, so to speak, all your love space and bandwidth is completely used up, and suddenly you have unbridled love for another child. And it wasn't as if love number one got divided into two, right? You subdivided it. No, love is an infinite quality, and therefore I'm able to love fully child A and child B, and you can't explain it to anybody, but you love your children absolutely, each one of them. And yes, there's challenges everywhere, but you love them absolutely. From the child,
you might have to divide your attention.
Exactly. Time and attention has to be divided. So from the child's perspective, they say, parent, you don't love me as much. The parent absolutely loves each child without any condition in a normal and healthy relationship. And in a certain sense, sometimes we think like that. We think in those childish terms. Like there's 7 billion human beings on this planet. Does God really care about me unless I've got 20,000 subscribers on Facebook? You know what I'm saying? Like, unless somebody's telling me I'm important. Am I really important? And the answer is yes. You have a unique, solitary relationship with Hashem. Hashem thinks you're valid. And therefore, that's like sort of stage number one. So once I realized that, if I'm willing to retrace my steps to where I come from, which is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and I'm reattaching myself to, we'll call it the current, then all the deficiencies fall away. But if I don't realize I'm important enough to do that, then I'm just kind of like, I'm struggling around in the darkness trying to look for meaning and people to tell me that I'm important because I don't realize I actually really am. That's what seems to be happening here, and that's where that's why the two parts of the sentence are connected. Hashem Elokai, Hashem, my God, I have this connection. I can get back to you. Shivati Elecho, but I know that you are really it. You really, all my problems can be resolved, and all my fear, my completion is. Then Vatir Paini. Then there's healing.
Right. I think sort of connected to that and beyond that is he's almost answering the question of like, where does healing come from? Right? Where he's saying, you see people have tzaras. So our relationship to people's problems is to solve problems. Right? Like somebody's got like, a boo-boo. So kid's got a boo-boo. So like, come let me put a Band-Aid on the boo-boo. But ultimately what the kid really wants is not the Band-Aid. What the kid is screaming for is like the relationship with the parent. Because in the arms of their parent, the pain is negligible. Kids will scream for the parent to show up. And then as soon as the parent comes by, then you have to have a terror. It's like, oh, why am I screaming? Well, I'm screaming because I need a Band-Aid. But really what you need is a hug. Right? Really what, and David Melech is saying here that Hashem is that when I connect back to the Rebbeinu Shalom, so then I don't need the Band-Aid anymore. I need a Band-Aid because I'm not connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom.
Yes.
And you see this like in general with people like in relationships and in the world and all of the machlos that people have. Like so much of what we try to solve, and Rav Kook speaks about this at the beginning of our Tshuva, like we've learned before, that like medicine tries to solve like this particular like acute crisis now, right? Like I'm sick with this now, so I have to take a pill for this.
Medication and the symptoms will disappear, right?
Right, but like it doesn't solve like the root of like, oh, I'm like chole nefesh, like there's something wrong. I'm disconnected from like the Makar Chaim, and I need to be reconnected to that. And then when I'm infused with a world of Kedusha and Tara and Avos Hashem and Yer Shamayim, so then these machlas will resolve themselves. It's only symptomatic of being vulnerable to the world. But Hashem Shivasi Alach V'Tipaini, if I'm connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom, then it's Peseda.
Exactly.
Now that's not like Chalila knock on modern medicine. Like, of course, modern medicine has immense avodas. But like everybody realizes today, like the surface level symptomatic approach to healing doesn't help for like the chronic things that are really paining and ailing people.
Exactly. And then real refuah is real shleimus. Real shleimus is only coming back, but you can only come back.
Right.
But you know you're coming back to.
That's it. Like, So I was reading this. We've got to finish up in a second. But I was reading this a little while ago. Like, you take like an Advil and have a cup of coffee because you're exhausted and have a headache. It'll solve the problem for now.
You just need to get more sleep, man.
But you got to get some sleep. Otherwise, it's not going to get better.
Correct.
Like
that's a good example. Exactly.
Right, there's a greater thing going on, and I think that's what David Melech is saying. Hashem Shivasi Alach V'Tipaini, and we will we'll pick up from Halisa Michelle Nafshi. Please God next week.
Amazing. Such a pleasure as always.
Good.
Have a wonderful week ahead.
Have a beautiful week and Hatzlacha. We'll see you next week. We'll see you later.